What's up everybody, it's Jack over at Send It Cycles California, and today we have two brand new 79BIKE Falcon Pros. I'm going to be doing an unboxing and setup video for this bike right here. I'm super stoked for this video because these bikes are awesome. So let's not waste any time and get right into it. So first thing is to locate your front wheel, get the zip ties off of that and set it aside. Now there are a lot of zip ties and foam on the bike to protect it during shipping, so take your time to remove all of that the best you can. Try not to cut anything you're not supposed to, especially towards the front of the bike where the electronic cables are and the brake cables are. Once you've revealed most of the bike, next thing you want to do is locate the yellow strap in the back of the bike, undo that one first, and then we will move to the yellow strap on the front of the bike. While you're doing this, put one hand on the top of the bike just to keep it stable after you get that strap off, because the forks are going to uncompress and it might become unstable. So after you've done that, locate your accessory box as well as your charger box. We're going to open up the accessory box right now because that is going to have all of the tools that you're going to need for this assembly. First, locate this little pouch. It's going to have all of the Allen keys we are going to need. We're going to start by installing the handlebars, but before we do that, you might notice that the cables in the front of the bike are kind of twisted and tangled up. So if they are, try to undo that as much as possible so that they hang down straight. Then we are going to find the Allen key that fits on these bolts that hold the headlight bracket in. We are going to break all of these loose, but we are only going to take 3 of them out, and I'm going to show you why in a second. Set those 3 bolts that you took out aside. If you're doing this next part by yourself, it can be pretty tricky, but take your time with it. What you're going to do is hold your handlebars and your headlight bracket in one hand while you take that final bolt that's holding the headlight bracket out. And then we're going to line up all the holes for the handlebar mount and the headlight bracket with the holes on the frame and put that bolt in, just getting it started so that it will hold everything onto the bike. Once you get that one bolt in, you can grab those other 3 bolts that you took out and get those in as well. Go ahead and tighten those up with the German torque good and tight. So once you've got the handlebars mounted, next we are going to move on to the display. Again, routing these cables so that they are not tangled up with anything else. Grab one of the small Allen keys that fits on the bolts for the display bracket and take those bolts out. While you're doing this, be aware that there is a small nut on the back of the bracket in a recessed piece of plastic. Try not to lose this as you are taking the bolts out. And once you have those all the way out, you can open up the bracket on the display and slide that onto the handlebars. Now you can adjust the display to an angle that you want and then put the bolts back in the bracket. What I like to do is put one finger on the back of the bracket, holding in that little nut so that you don't accidentally push it out and lose it. Tighten those bolts up just so that the display doesn't move on the handlebars. I've noticed that you don't have to tighten these bolts down all the way to bottoming out. You want it just tight enough so that the display doesn't move. Next, we are going to mount our brake lever, again routing that cable in a way that makes sense. Take these 2 bolts out of the bracket, position the brake lever where you want it, and then replace those 2 bolts. These should be pretty tight so that your brake lever doesn't move at all. Next, we are going to mount the cluster of buttons. There is 1 small bolt on this bracket. Go ahead and take that all the way out, allowing you to open up the bracket, put it over the handlebars, and then put that bolt back in, tightening it down once you have it in position. Not too tight on this one, just so that the buttons don't move. Next, we are going to remove the front axle so that we can get that front wheel on, but before you do that, you're going to want to remove the battery so that your bike is a lot lighter and easier to move around. To remove the battery, grab your keys that came in the accessory box, push down on the battery lid as you turn the key counterclockwise, allowing you to open it up. Get the power plug cable out of the way and grab the battery by the handle and pull it straight up and out of the bike. Now for this next part, if you don't have a stand to put your bike on, you can locate this piece of cardboard that came in the packaging. We're going to use this as a stand. You're going to want to keep this nearby, preferably under the front of the bike, just behind the front forks like this, which is going to allow you to slide it under the bike once we lift up the front. Now to remove the axle, grab the biggest Allen key that came in the kit. The axle nut should be pretty loose and easy to take out. Set that aside, and now we can continue to remove the axle. You may be able to get the axle out just by lifting up the front of the bike a little bit and pushing the axle through with your finger, but if it's too tight in there, what I like to do is grab this little piece of rubber and a rubber mallet, put the piece of rubber up against the inside part of the axle and strike that piece of rubber with the mallet so that you don't damage the axle. If you don't have a small piece of rubber like this, you can get creative, maybe use a socket with a towel wrapped around it, something soft just so that you don't damage the axle when you're hitting it. Once the axle starts to come out, you can use the big Allen wrench on the other side of the axle now to get some leverage and pull that thing out. It's going to take some force, but twist it as you pull and it should pop right out. When you remove the axle from the piece of wood that's attached to the pallet, the bike is going to be unstable, so make sure it doesn't fall over before you walk away. Before installing the front wheel, locate the wheel spacers that are attached to the front wheel with a zip tie. Undo that and put those wheel spacers aside. Now before we can install the front wheel, you're going to need to remove this little plastic wedge that is in the front brake caliper. This plastic part keeps the front brake from being compressed if you were to grab the front brake and squeeze it. So once you have this plastic piece out, don't grab the front brake or you're gonna have a bad time. Now this is where that piece of cardboard comes in. You're going to lift up the front of your bike and slide that piece of cardboard under the front of your bike, keeping the front of the bike up in the air. Make sure that it's stable before walking away and grab your front wheel. Align your front wheel between the forks and grab those wheel spacers. The spacers go up against the wheel with the big side facing the hub of the wheel. I like to keep my fingers on the spacers as I lift the wheel up into place just so they don't fall out. And when you're aligning the front wheel, keep your eyes on the brake caliper, making sure that the rotor slides in evenly. Now with the rotor inserted into the caliper, align one side of the wheel so that you can start feeding the axle through the fork and into the hub. Then move on to the other side. You'll notice that the forks articulate independently, so you might have to move one of them around so that you can get them lined up and push the axle all the way through. Take your time with this part because it can be a bit challenging if you are working by yourself. Once you've got the axle through, grab that axle nut and tighten this one up good and tight. Now underneath your front forks there are 4 axle pinch bolts, and these come pretty loose, so you can tighten them up by hand at first and then grab the Allen key that fits and tighten these ones down. And the way these bolts work is that once you tighten up one of them, the other one is going to become loose. So you want to work back and forth in between these 2 bolts, one side of the bike and then the other. Once you've got those nice and snug, go back over to your accessory box and locate your foot pegs. Remove the nut on the end of the foot peg bolt, and notice that the pegs are side specific, so you want to place the foot peg on the side of the bike so that when you bend the foot peg back, it should be bending towards the back of the bike. This is so that if you hit something with your foot peg, it will bend back out of the way rather than just clipping on something and snapping right off. Notice there are some holes on the foot peg where they meet the frame of the bike, and on the frame there are some little pins that come out, and that's where they should slide into. Now that you've got the foot pegs on the bike, you can start the nuts on the foot peg bolt with your fingers at first, and then grab the wrench out of your accessory box and tighten those up. You want these to be pretty tight. Next, we are going to install the front fender, so go back to your accessory box and locate the bag with the number plate on it, and inside this bag there's going to be 3 small bolts. These are for the front fender. What I like to do here is slide the front fender in between the forks and then put the bolt on the Allen key that you're going to use and slide that bolt through the fender before aligning it with the holes on the forks. I've noticed that there is quite a bit of Loctite on these bolts, so they can be kind of difficult to get in. Just make sure that you're not cross-threading the bolts as you are tightening them, and you should be fine. Once you get the fender on, there's one last thing to do, and that's the reflectors. And that is it for the assembly. Make sure to watch my video on how to do the motor self-learning. That is a crucial step after you get the bike together. I will link it down below. It's really easy, but it is something that you have to do. So check that out, leave a comment if you have any questions, and once your bike's ready to rip, send it.